Hey, good morning. So I figured I'd try out this live streaming. And essentially, what I'm doing is this morning, I'm going to share my screen, walk you through how I create landing pages for different show guests on Beyond the Bid. Let me close my window real quick. So, Beyond the Bid is, if you're not familiar, it's a podcast show on YouTube, essentially a show, I guess, where I interview builders, remodelers, contractors, people who are involved in the construction industry. And we essentially talk about practical AI. We talk about the challenges that are in entrepreneurship and construction. And we talk about goal setting, team development, really all the components that it takes to build a successful contracting and construction business. But what I'm showing you here, this is a little cheat code. So I'm actually using Gemini, which is my preferred LLM or large language model. And this thing actually created what's called an SEO title, or the landing page title for the web page I'm about to build, as well as the meta description here. So essentially, when I go to create a web page, I already have a lot of the assets ready to go. The nice part too, because I've built this I've added in certain things into the instructions, I make sure that it creates a carousel if I want to turn it into an Instagram or a meta post, as well as a 75-second script if I want to turn it into a short form video or even a reel, right? And then then of course it adds in the caption too for that post if I want to turn it into one. So that's actually what I named this live stream, because that's what we're going to be covering today. So let's see, getting back to it though, what I'll do next is I'll show you more or less how I create pages for the show guests. So I'm using a tool called Podmatch that ultimately connects me or the show with potential guests, kind of like Tinder for podcasts, I guess, if you want to think of it that way. But actually, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I mark off all the tasks on here, because it looks like I haven't done that in a little while. Let's see. So Sarah, I actually had on the show earlier in the week. There we go. So recording link, mark complete. There we go. And we're going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to go back to Gemini, Sarah May. There we go. Yeah, so this was back on the 15th. Write a 5-star review for my conversation with Sarah. We'll say 55 words. So I believe this one, you can see I actually have a separate gem. So a custom GPT if you're using ChatGPT, but in Gemini, they're called gems. This gem is actually called a podcaster, and I usually try and update these at least every month, if not sooner. But I'm on V3 of this one, and essentially what it does is it knocks out, here, I'll scroll up while that's typing in. So it generates all of this. All I do is plug in the Podmatch profile, and I plug in, the pre-discovery or pre-recording show notes. So essentially what we talked about on the pre-interview. and it will create this. So pre-production research and strategy, core episode assets. So again, that SEO title, and then the meta description, the big boy meta description for YouTube. It also does a Spotify description. And then here's essentially the real meat of it. So when I create a podcast or a webinar, I use this tool called Contrast. And it's just a free webinar tool similar to like Riverside if you've used that, or Zoom even. But the real benefit is, well, actually there's quite a few. My favorite part is just the UI UX of it. So what it looks like, if I hit record, and I'll just turn this into test. I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but essentially what I'm trying to do is show you different tools in the tech stack that you can incorporate in, or really how I'm using different free and some paid tools to streamline how I'm creating shows. The impetus for this, or the reason for it, is I've been on a handful of podcasts, actually more than a handful recently. And what's crazy is the turnaround time is like 4 to 6 weeks between when you actually are on the show and when they send you the deliverables, or at least, try and promote your stuff on social. And it's insane. It's like, what if I'm trying to promote a campaign that ends in 3 weeks, or I'm trying to promote my new book or something like that, right? It's that time frame just doesn't work for a lot of small business owners, just because the world is moving so ridiculously fast too. But yeah, so let me jump it back in here. The reason why I started all of this, one, because the show is fun and it's a great way to build a brand and get a lot more traction. And what's crazy is you now see 3 versions of me. But 2, more importantly, it's because it helps promote potential partners. It helps, tell stories of the industry. It helps listeners overcome problems and learn new things. And 4 to 6 weeks is insane for that. So my whole goal with this is to get that delivery down to 72 hours. So by the time I meet with someone, in terms of the recording, we do the production, that 45-minute call, and then all the time it takes to edit and create social posts. That whole window, I'm trying to condense down to 72 hours. That's my goal with all of these tools. And so Contrast is my preferred choice for the actual recording. One, because the UI UX is a lot cleaner. You can see here, I'll actually remove myself from the stream, and then I can actually bring in slides if I want to. So I'll just bring in an example PNG or image here. And then, I can obviously drop that in. But my favorite part is actually the topics. So every show that I create, I have 6. I have 1 master topic, and then 6 questions or 6 categories that kind of revolve around that master topic. So the first being, I'll just call it what is it? Origin story. And I'll keep that at full screen. And then next, we'll just say chapter 1, hit lower third, and I'll show you what the difference is. So turn my screen back on. Even give myself the spotlight. So if I'm interviewing myself, which would be weird, but and then I say, "Oh, hey Grant, why don't you can you do us a favor and actually give us a little bit of your backstory?" And as soon as I hit that, it transitions to a full page. And then if I continue into chapter 1, before I say chapter 1, I'll click it, and then you can see it's actually a little bit more subtle transition. But what's pretty cool about this is, of course, it looks good, But two is it actually timestamps when you click that button. So when you go back into the recording, in contrast, it will literally timestamp when you're talking about certain topics, which makes editing really easy, which makes clipping really easy. And it just makes the webinar like feel a lot more professional. The other thing too, because this is actually a webinar tool, or that's how it was designed, I can use it for polls. So I can, obviously ask a quick question, Q&A, say 1 or 2. And then if I start it, this goes live if this session was actually live. And if we actually had participants in here, same thing, you can drop in call to actions. So really, there's just a lot more like functionality that you can use with this tool. But after the show is done, then I am left with something that generally looks like this. So I'll use the recording that I had with Sarah. And this is the really slick part, is if you've used, like CapCut or any of those social media tools, you can upload a long form video and it will help you grab snippets or clips from that. This tool does it for you too. And it helps you identify, or it basically sorts by virality or assumed virality. So you can see here's a clip that it pulled and it said, here's the reason why. Mention of a specific percentage adds credibility and interest, increasing its potential to go viral. So then all I have to do is essentially export out these clips, and I can change the format, into landscape or portrait, change the font to match my brand, all that stuff. So that really makes just the deliverables that I can pull from this single recording so much more beneficial and so much more helpful. I can, of course, pull out the actual video. I can pull out messages if it was an actual live webinar, and then I can turn it into different assets using, I'm assuming they're using ChatGPT to do this, as well as the transcript. But the next step generally is I'll bring this, I'll bring video from contrast into a different tool called Tella. And Tella is amazing. Tella is probably one of my favorite tools I found in the last year. If you've used Loom, just a screen sharing tool, it's similar to that, but it's similar in concept, but very different in the way that they execute on it, because you can do so much more with Tella than you ever could with Loom. So what I mean by that is if I click on my podcasts, excuse me. So here again is that video I uploaded with Sarah. And if I hit edit real quick, I can turn on studio voice. So even though it's a pre-recorded video, if I upload it in here, it will actually go through all of these different clips and just make me and whoever's joining sound a lot better. As well as I can grab, again, pre-recorded clips, like transition clips, ending clips, call to action clips, and literally drop those into the Tella too. So like a lot of the capabilities that you get in this tool are, right on pace with what you'd find in like a Lightroom by Adobe, right? And, if I'm not trying to do some color grading, this tool really just helps streamline the way that I can publish and get content out there. Anyway, though, today I got way down that rabbit hole, so sorry about that. But essentially what I'm trying to do is walk you through how I'm creating landing pages for these different shows. So what I'm doing right now is I use a tool called Gamma, which if you're on LinkedIn or play around with like PowerPoint or anything like that, you've probably seen some ads by them. It's a tool that you can pretty much use for anything. So 2 of my websites, the Beyond the Bid one in general, is hosted on Gamma and built entirely on Gamma, which is sick. And it allows me to, again, streamline the way that content is published, created all through like AI and agentic AI. But for today, though, I'm going to show you real quick on how I create a landing page for a new guest. So today at, I think, 12:30, I have a show with Noah Hutchison. This guy. He's actually a design builder here in Fort Collins too. And I met him through a mutual friend. But he agreed to, I mean, we've worked with each other a little bit, but I asked him to come onto the show because he opened up a retail store in Old Town. And essentially what that is a shop that, you know, kind of like a boutique, bougie shop that people can go into and look at, you know, custom furniture, design work, lots of trinkets, I guess, if you want to call that, candles, like home amenities. And in today's session, basically, I want to walk through what does it take to own 2 different businesses, and how are you using one to scale the other? How are you getting how are you using the retail store to propel your design, build, construction business? So before I bring anybody on, though, I have a certain process in place. And the first step is I jump on a pre-interview call with them, basically where I take the asset from that podcaster Gemini, namely like the master topic, and I ask them, hey, are you good with using this as the master topic for your session? I have, you know, and then I ultimately walk them through the why that master topic is the one that I would prefer to go with. But the rest of the flow kind of looks like this. So after we jump off of that session, then I start to build out a page that looks like this, where again, we have the master topic and then the how-to. This is actually built in a Canva template. So really the only parts that I need to change, here, I'll actually turn this thing on. So I change this, of course, with the name of the episode. I change the episode number, change the name, and then I grab a professional looking image, if I can find one, of the guest, and I'll bring it into that template as well. And then I'll just export out of Canva, of course. Cool. So then, the next step is, you know, again, Gamma works off of cards. So what's nice is it really helps you just, you know, I keep on saying the word, but streamline the way that you can create landing pages, you can create assets, you can create documents, PowerPoints, whatever. And so I generally just like to duplicate a card and then change the assets on the card just to save myself a lot of time. Once I have the design work or the theme or the template ready to go. So in this case, though, the only thing I change again is name of the show and the how-to, and then I'll drop in the company logo that the guest works for. Then I will bring in show notes like this. And the show notes, these are captured and are generated by taking that initial thread that I had with Gemini that contains the pre-interview call, the Podmatch guest profile if they have one, their LinkedIn bio, and then I'll actually drop in the transcript from Contrast 2. So in this case, I'll just use the conversation with Sarah again. If I go back to the actual video, and then I'll hit clips. And here on the left, this is actually the full transcript from that call. And what I can do is I can just copy the whole thing and then go back to, so here's that thread I was just talking about. And I'll literally just drop in, here's the full transcript from my call with Sarah. So then while that's working, I'll jump back to the page. And I'm actually going to use, let's see, where is hers at? It's called Own Your Marketing. There it is.